My husband confessed to having an affair with my sister. Just as I found out I was pregnant, what should I do? I am 35F, and I have been married to my spouse, Henry, 37M, for 5 years. Our marriage seemed to be going well until my spouse suddenly admitted to having an affair with my sister. We both work as doctors at a large university hospital, you see. Outsiders may find that glamorous or satisfying, but it also adds a layer of complexity to our relationship. Our marriage hasn't always been picture perfect because of the long hours, the emotional toll of caring for patients, and the fact that we both have a strong passion for what we do. It has been challenging to balance our personal lives with our careers, and there have been times when the demands of our work have made things much more challenging. However, we were able to help one another through it all. He was my companion, and I never doubted for a moment that I would be with him for the rest of my life. Actually, I found out I was pregnant 2 months ago. Henry and I were excited to have children when we initially got married. Despite our best efforts and dreams, it simply never occurred for us. Even though we tried for a long time. We eventually came to terms with it. We gave up on making an effort, reasoning that if it was meant to be, it would come naturally. It was difficult to let go of that dream, but we put all of our effort into our relationships and occupations, believing that destiny would lead the way. I therefore refrained from drawing conclusions right away when I started getting morning sickness. A part of me assumed it might simply be work-related stress. In order to rule out the possibility, I nevertheless made the decision to take a pregnancy test. I was blown away when the test came back positive. It was such a time of great excitement and incredulity. I never imagined that I would be looking at that small test and knowing I was pregnant after all these years. Waves of emotions swept over me, and I had to take a seat to come to terms with the fact that I was pregnant. It was a mixture of wonder and happiness. My first instinct at the time was to tell Henry the news. After everything we'd gone through together, I knew how much this would mean to him. However, he was away at the time for a number of medical conferences. I chose to wait until he came back to tell him in person since this information was too crucial to convey over the phone or in a brief text message. I was aware that witnessing his response firsthand would heighten the significance of the situation. I had everything sorted out just right for the day Henry was due back from his trip. When I received the amazing news that I was expecting, I wanted to make the occasion extra special. I made lunch for us at our favorite restaurant, which we often frequented on special occasions or when we simply needed a little alone time. It was peaceful, comfortable, and stocked with all the foods we both enjoyed, so it was a place that carried many memories for us. As I thought about how this would be the beginning of a new chapter in our life, I tried to picture his reaction when I broke the news to him. However, I could tell right away that something wasn't right when I went to pick him up at the airport. Henry appeared distracted, seemingly absorbed in his thoughts. His greeting was different from his normal one. He didn't give me a warm embrace or show pleasure at seeing me after a long time apart. I could sense the disconnect in his manner, and he hardly even said hello. I attempted to dismiss it, speculating that perhaps he had been affected by the lengthy flights or the pressure of the conference. In an attempt to cheer him up and give us a chance to catch up, I brought up the reservation at our favorite restaurant. To my astonishment, however, he sighed, clearly annoyed, and suggested that we probably just go home and cancel. He sounded abrasive, as though the thought irritated him. I was surprised by his response. Since we didn't have any other important arrangements for the day, I figured that a lovely lunch would be the perfect way to help him relax. I told him that it would be better to have a brief lunch out and then go home because we would most likely wind up ordering takeout anyhow. He nodded curtly and let out an angry groan. Then, as though I hadn't been there, he resumed staring at his phone and distractedly scrolling while I took us to the restaurant. The tension between us was heavy by the time we arrived at the restaurant. Henry didn't say much as we sat down at the table. I questioned him about the conference in an attempt to start a conversation and diffuse the tension. His answers were one-word answers that didn't lead anywhere. They were brief, aloof and chilly. He was very different from that. Usually, following these excursions, he would tell tales of the individuals he encountered, the thought-provoking discussions he attended, or the novel concepts he discovered. However, he seemed to be keeping something back this time, and I couldn't help but wonder what was actually happening. To be fair, I had observed a minor change in Henry's conduct over the previous few weeks. He had begun to seem aloof before our lunch that day. Although I was a little worried, I dismissed it as the typical stress that comes with being a doctor. At first I didn't give it much thought because our professions are hard and frequently leave us exhausted both physically and psychologically. Because of the demands of our jobs, we had both experienced difficult periods in the past, so I figured this was simply another one. I kept telling myself that after his conference, he would feel better and we would return to our regular routine, and that he would finally open up after things had calmed down. However, I started to feel increasingly nervous as I sat across from him at lunch that day. Seeing him not recognize me and hardly speak. I made an effort to ignore my nervousness though. Even though we were at odds, I was anxious to inform him about the baby since I had waited long enough to do so. I hoped that by telling him about the pregnancy, he would suddenly stop worrying about whatever was hurting him and we could both enjoy this moment that would change our lives. Henry looked up from his plate just as I was getting up the nerve to tell him, just as I was ready to break the best news of our lives. He spoke in a calm, low voice, saying what I never thought I would hear. I have been unfaithful to you. Asterisk asterisk. I didn't really pay attention to what he said at first. For a moment I believed I had misheard the clatter of talking and clinking dishes that filled the restaurant. I laughed nervously and said, "To what?" As though he had said something incorrectly. Then he looked me in the eyes, something he hadn't really done all day, and said it again, more clearly this time, in a tone that was almost emotionless. Asterisk asterisk. I've been having sex with Emma, your sister. Asterisk asterisk. The world around me seemed to stop at that very instant. My face became numb. My sister and my husband were having an affair. Asterisk asterisk Emma. Asterisk asterisk, my sister, of all people. I gazed at him, trying to make sense of what he had said. What do you mean? I questioned him again, even though I knew in my heart. Even though I didn't want to believe it, his expression made it obvious. He simply sat there and looked directly at me with such a detached and dispassionate air, as if this were just another truth he was stating, something trivial and unimportant. The man I believed I knew, the man I had loved and trusted for so many years, was nowhere to be seen, and there was no regret. Everything I had known, including our marriage, our relationship and even my own sister, seemed to be disintegrating before my very eyes, and I had no control over it. I could feel the sting of betrayal in the pit of my breast, and tears started to fill up in my eyes. When did it start? I questioned him in a shaky voice. I had to know. Some part of me hoped that perhaps this was all an error or misunderstanding, but I wasn't sure why. Almost casually, he started telling me about his and Emma's several months of sleeping together. With every syllable, my heart fell deeper. He clarified that it all began when Emma ended her relationship with her previous boyfriend. After the separation, she was inconsolable and had begun visiting our home regularly to get assistance. I can still clearly recall those times. In an effort to support her during such a trying time, I had invited her into our house. I believed we were aiding in her recovery since she was my sister. I had no idea, though, that Henry and Emma were growing closer behind my back in ways I could never have predicted. Yes, they had been friendly from the beginning. At the time, I really recall thinking it was wonderful that my sister and my husband got along so well. Knowing how close our family was to one another comforted me. However, I never imagined they were *that close, that they were sharing a bed, not even in my worst dreams. The enormity of the betrayal from both of them was too much for me to comprehend. I could feel my surroundings becoming hazy as Henry went on to describe his affair. He was no longer someone I wanted to hear. Nothing made sense. I thought I was about to get sick as my stomach rumbled. I snatched my keys from the table and sprang to my feet. The fact that we were in the center of a packed restaurant didn't bother me. The possibility that people were observing didn't bother me. I simply needed to leave. As I hurried to the exit to locate my car, Henry began calling after me. I didn't see my phone buzzing till I was in the car and heading home. Of course it was Henry. He contacted me again, reprimanding me for leaving him at the restaurant and for overreacting in front of everyone, rather than offering an apology. I yelled into the phone for him to leave me alone and take an Uber. As I drove home, my heart broken and my mind racing, I could hardly see the road through my tears. I shut myself in our bedroom as soon as I arrived home. I started crying hysterically at that point because the truth of what had just transpired hit me hard. I was unable to comprehend it. My own sister and my spouse, the man I loved. How could they have betrayed me in this manner? I sobbed till my body was totally worn out and I had no more tears to shed. Henry must have returned to the house at some time. His voice was muffled by the wood when I heard him knock on the bedroom door. I couldn't stand him. Even though he insisted on talking. I was no longer able to listen to him. I curled up in a ball on the bed, my sobs smearing the pillow, refusing to open the door. I must have slept off at some point, but I'm not sure how long I remained that way. It was already midnight when I awoke. Henry had ceased hammering, and the house was oddly quiet. I was so hungry that I made the decision to go downstairs and buy some food. Henry was dozing off on the couch when I arrived in the living room, and his phone was on the table beside him. My blood boiled when I saw him sleeping there, appearing so content. After what he had just told me, how could he sleep so soundly? After standing there for a while, fuming with rage and shock, I turned to look at his phone. This was something I had never done in our whole marriage. However, I unlocked Henry's phone for the first time that evening. He was so certain that I wouldn't ever suspect him that he hadn't even bothered to change his passcode, which he had always used. He was so confident that I would always trust him. How foolish I had been. How could I have failed to notice what was going on right in front of me? My heart pounded as my sister and I went through his messages, dreading what we may discover but still having to know the whole truth. And there it was. They had exchanged several offensive pictures, each more agonizing to view than the one before. Pictures of my own sister and my husband smiling, making jokes, and organizing their covert meetings. They had even made plans to meet at different hotels while I was totally unaware of it. What broke me the most were Emma's texts. She had written in one of them about how thrilling it was to have sex with him behind my back and how the excitement of lying enhanced their relationship. She even went so far as to claim that it improved the quality of the intercourse. It was unbelievable to me that this was genuine. I had grown up with and trusted my own sister, and she had deceived me in the worst way. And our marriage was so easily ruined by Henry, the man I had promised to be with for the rest of my life. I had to have proof of what I had witnessed, so I snapped pictures of their messages on my own phone while my hands were shaking. I went back upstairs in silence after getting what I needed. I started packing. I was aware that I couldn't live in the same house as Henry. I couldn't bring up this child with a husband who had betrayed me and so severely damaged my trust. In an attempt to keep myself together, I packed a few necessities in a bag, but my hands trembled with each thing I put in and my heart was racing. After finishing, I drove directly to my parents' home, which was located in a different town. My parents were shocked to see me when I got to their house, but I couldn't tell them anything straight away. Fortunately, they didn't ask many questions that evening. I simply told them that I needed to remain with them for a bit. I've been residing with my parents ever since that evening. Yes, I am in the process of ending my relationship with Henry. After all of this, I haven't spent any time in getting a divorce. After being betrayed, there is no turning back. After learning of everything, my parents are also incensed and have cut Emma off entirely. She is no longer welcome in our family, and they are ashamed of what she did. Emma has repeatedly called me to express her regret, saying that it was all a big mistake. However, I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to forgive her. Ironically, Henry's family has been incredibly supportive, especially given that their own kid is to blame for this problem. They made it apparent that they were extremely disappointed in him as soon as they learned of his adultery. They have made a strong stand and disapprove of what he has done. He has been informed that they will not allow my sister into their family. They haven't tried to hide their distaste. It's as if they now recognize Henry for who he really is. Update: since many of you have been inquiring about the nature of my connection with Emma and the reasons behind my sister's actions against me, let me clarify a few things. What can I say? Throughout our childhood, we had what I believe to be a typical sibling connection. Our parents loved us both equally, and none of us was the golden child of the family. There were never any serious arguments or jealousies between us. This stings even more because I have always loved my sister no matter what. I honestly worried about her when she went through her breakup 6 months ago. I am not blind to the irony that Emma's ex was discovered cheating on her with a coworker. I wanted to be there for her as her big sister because she was in complete despair. To help her recover and get back on her feet, I proposed that she remain with us for a bit. Remembering how she would confide in me about her trust concerns following her breakup is what's really getting to me right now. While she was sleeping with my husband, she would sob on my shoulder and tell me that she could never contemplate doing to someone what her ex had done to her. There are simply no adequate words to describe the degree of manipulation. Emotionally, the pregnancy has been challenging. I am reminded to share these events with my husband whenever I have a doctor's appointment or develop a new ailment. I'm dealing with this alone instead. Well, not totally alone. My parents have been amazing, and a few of my hospital co-workers have really come through for me. The impact this has had on our work lives is unexpected. Fortunately, Henry and I work in different departments at the same hospital. News of what transpired spread really quickly, and although most individuals have been professional, it's obvious whose side they support. Emma's response to everything has been especially startling. She appears to be very shocked that our parents have interrupted her. She continues to send them lengthy emails in which she emphasizes the importance of family unity and how she is still their daughter. After she made the terrible decision to betray her own sister, Mom eventually lost it and responded to Emma, telling her that yes, family *should *be together, which is precisely why they are supporting me. I appreciate how supportive Henry's family has been. In particular, his mother has been amazing. She has made it plain that I will always be a member of their family, regardless of what happens with Henry, and she calls me frequently to see how I and the baby are doing. She told me that she is really ashamed of her son's behavior and that she taught him better than this. Concentrating on my child is what's enabling me to proceed. Every time I see them on an ultrasound or feel them move, it serves as a reminder that even the most dire circumstances can yield something lovely. Even though I'm still afraid of becoming a single mother, I know it's preferable to remaining in a marriage with someone who could completely deceive me. After learning about my pregnancy, I'm relieved Emma broke up with Henry. Unfortunately, he lost her as well. The man had the gall to end our marriage in the hopes of getting away with a younger me. Naturally, this does not imply that I will ever forgive Emma, but I am relieved that Henry is now alone. I'm taking each day as it comes for the time being. Despite all the stress, I'm attempting to concentrate on keeping my pregnancy healthy while the divorce proceedings proceed. I'm thankful to everyone who has helped me along the way, and I'm gradually realizing that sometimes the family you select is more resilient than the one you were born into. I have no idea what the future may bring, but I do know that my child and I both deserve better than what Henry and Emma did to us. Update 2: Henry made the decision to visit my parents' house once more in an attempt to make things better, but this time the situation worsened. He began by attempting to persuade me to reconcile. He explained to me that parents must occasionally give up something for their kids. He continued by saying that our child deserved to have two parents rather than just one. However, I had had enough of this story. I told him straight out that he didn't even *1* this baby until recently. For heaven's sake, he had wished for me to miscarry. And all of a sudden, he's talking about the value of sacrifice and family. He attempted to change his mind when I threw that in his face, claiming that perhaps he would change his mind after holding the kid. Like all his previous promises, his words were empty. I confronted him directly. He had an affair with my sister. We had almost little possibility of ever reconciling. However, Henry chose to turn the tables on me rather than take accountability. He began to blame me for his affair, claiming that I was constantly preoccupied with work and that I had not shown him affection for months. This was typical Henry, always attempting to place the blame elsewhere and make me feel responsible for his treachery. Before we were married, he was well aware of who I was. Before we met, we had worked together for years, so why was he acting so startled now? He began complaining about Emma at that point. He accused me of failing to recognize that he had been unfaithful to me for months and said that she had failed to support him when he was feeling weak. He seemed to be apologizing to me for not spotting him in the act sooner. By this time, I was furious. I bluntly informed him that he should quit blaming me for his adultery. His own parents, who had sided with me for a reason, were aware that what he had done was unacceptable. Henry sneered, his haughtiness returning, and declared that his parents loved him and would always forgive him. I was unable to contain myself at that point. I was honest with him, telling him that his parents had already chosen to deny him his inheritance and were done with him. Furthermore, our infant was receiving all of that money rather than him. When he realized, I saw his face fall apart. He was speechless for the first time since it all started. In a moment, his typical self-assurance and smugness disappeared. To be honest, I did get a sense of fulfillment from seeing him consider the repercussions of his behavior. He began screaming at me, calling me nasty and vile for ruining his life and expressing his regret that he had cheated on me earlier. Since this whole argument was becoming meaningless, I simply shook my head and requested him to go. Henry then became quite near to me and began yelling, which really unnerved me. At this time my parents, who had attempted to keep me in the other room, heard Henry's loud statements and came out to see how I was doing. My dad quickly came over and yanked Henry away when he realized that he was only inches from my face and that I was flinching. I saw my father strike Henry across the face. At first, Henry was confused and unable to comprehend what had just transpired. Then my dad, who was much taller than him, took hold of his collar, pulled him out, and pushed him out the door. I heard my father threatening him aloud that it would be his last day on earth if he ever revealed his face to us again. Henry has been completely silent for days after that. I suppose everything has really shook him up. Now that he hasn't texted or called, I can finally relax. I'm so appreciative that my father defended me, and I'm eager to get a divorce from this awful man and permanently end this phase of my life. Update 3. My previous update was 8 months ago. For those who have been following my journey, I just wanted to let you know how things are doing. Regarding my pregnancy, my daughter is doing well after I gave birth. In addition to continuing to see me, Henry's parents have established a trust fund for her. They have cut Henry off from the family and don't want anything to do with him. I have full custody of my child and have finally achieved the divorce I desired. For the time being, Henry's only duty is to pay child support. He paid a large amount of alimony because of his affair, but he didn't argue with me about anything during the divorce process. Henry made an effort to portray himself as a changed guy who merited partial custody during the custody proceedings. The judge, however, was unimpressed when his own parents testified about his actions and offered proof of his early rejection of the pregnancy, including his terrible yearning for a miscarriage. The best gift Emma could have given me after everything she did for me is that, although she still occasionally texts me, she hasn't disturbed me much overall. She attempted to get in touch with someone last month via a common friend, stating that she was interested in seeing her niece. I quickly shut that down. Despite being the biological aunt of my kid, she forfeited her right to participate in our lives when she decided to have an affair with my husband. The actual birth was a touching event. In fact, my mother and Henry's mother were in the delivery room with me. She swore to make sure her granddaughter would always know she was loved, despite her father's actions, and it was a wonderful moment as she held her for the first time. By making frequent visits and being the kind of grandma every child deserves, she has fulfilled her commitment. The most lovely thing that has emerged from this entire catastrophe is my kid. Fortunately, she doesn't look much like Henry, and she has my eyes. Every significant event, like her first giggle or grin, serves as a reminder that leaving was the right choice. Sharing these priceless moments with someone who had so severely betrayed me was unthinkable. Henry's parents have provided him with more than enough financial assistance. In addition to creating the trust fund, they have insisted on paying for all of my medical bills and assisting me in starting a college fund. Their grandchild should never have to rely on Henry for anything, they stated. Regarding Henry, he hasn't been around much, which is just how I want it. Beyond that, he hasn't shown much desire in being a father. He pays his child support on time, most likely because his parents are looking. He has reportedly been attempting to get back together with Emma, but she has reportedly moved to a different state and doesn't want to interact with him, according to mutual friends. Throughout it all, my parents have been my pillars of support. My dad, who has never been very emotional, becomes very mushy with his granddaughter, and they have assisted me in setting up a lovely nursery. Even after going through such betrayal, it is consoling to realize how much love is all around us. Considering everything that has transpired, I genuinely believe that I'm in a better place now. Though it no longer defines me, the betrayal still stings when I consider it. I'm not merely a woman who has had her sister and husband cheat on her. In addition to being a mother and a successful doctor, I reconstructed my life according to my own standards. I'm concentrating on my daughter's development and our new life together for the time being. Although it's not the life I had in mind, it's better than I could have ever dreamed of when I was attempting to work things out with Henry. Am I the asshole for refusing to raise my husband's children from his affair now that he and the woman he cheated with have passed away? Sorry for using a new account. I know that's a red flag, but I don't want to risk using my old Reddit account. My 45F husband, 49M, of 23 years has been having an affair with a 20-years-old girl since 2020. I found out this year when his affair partner gave birth to twin boys in March. Obviously we were going to divorce. We've been hashing things out since. It's been a lengthy process due to some properties in common and we needed to get an accountant since he used the shared account for his affair. Finally things seemed to be getting close to the end when both my husband and the woman he cheated with were killed in a car crash. By some miracle the twin babies were not harmed in the crash. Now they are orphaned and neither set of grandparents can take them in permanently. My husband's parents are both in assisted living, he has no siblings and the only aunt that could take them refuses. She's been child-free her whole life. On the woman's side, I'm not sure the details in full, but her parents are also not able to be involved long-term and the one sister she has lives overseas. Since we were still married and he had not updated his will, all his assets are set to pass to me and our 2 children. I'm not callous enough to leave those babies with nothing, so I agreed to let whoever is their legal guardian to have the remaining balance in the shared account. About $25,000 in savings. The issue is no one wants to take them in. Now my in-laws are pressuring me to take them in and raise them. The issue is, I don't want to. At all. I wouldn't love them and I don't want to be the evil stepmother. But I know a big part of me will always have a level of resentment towards them. I will probably favor my own children. It's not their fault, but I truly loved my husband and I thought we were happy before I found out about the affair. We have 2 daughters, 14 and 16. Obviously we had disagreements, but never insulted each other before. Then I found out about the affair and he began calling me names and blaming me for his cheating. He became abusive and even tried to kick me off the house, my childhood home that is not shared property for the record. I'm also raising teenagers alone now. I don't have the energy to raise babies anymore. My daughters hate their baby brothers. I tried to get them to spend time with their dad as we were divorcing, but they refused. Since this all was found out because of the babies, there wasn't really a way to sugarcoat the situation. And they are also too old to really get away with it. Most of my friends agree it's not my place to care for those children, but my in-laws, the affair woman's parents and my mother want me to raise them. I know my mom is just having grandkids fever, but it hurts to not have her support. I have to make a decision by next week or the boys will be going into foster care. At the moment they are temporarily placed with their maternal grandparents. I feel horrible, but I am very sure I can't take them in. Small update. Hey everyone, this blew up far more than I thought, and I appreciate the well wishes for my girls, the boys and myself. Also for the amount of lovely people offering to see about giving the twins a good home. I might not be their mother, but it does touch me and makes me glad there's good people out there. After thinking carefully and speaking to my lawyer, reading responses, doing research, etc. I plan to speak to the grandparents tomorrow and refuse to take legal guardianship of the boys. I will let them know of the usernames of people that offered meetings for private adoptions or fostering, but my daughters are my priority. It'll be up to the twins' grandparents to decide if they'll proceed with adoption, keep them, or turn them to the state. I wish I had the mental capacity to be the person to do this, but I have two girls that are going through a lot and they need my full attention. I'll also be talking to the lawyers to figure out if the boys have any inheritance claim properly. If they do, I'll separate it and leave it to the lawyers to do what they need to do for them to have access when it's best. If they don't, I'll find a way to ensure they have access to the $25,000 I was going to give them since the beginning. I won't do more, however. My moral compass might be biased, but I don't believe I'm obligated neither morally or legally to do more than what the word of law says. I can't help everyone and I shouldn't have to. I have two girls that lost their father, two girls that need therapy, two girls just about to get to college. They've gone through enough without seeing their mother favor the children of their father's mistress.